welcome. You're watching QTV and you are watching The Week in Review. I'm Adi Darami, your usual host. And those of you with really good eyesight will realize that my co-host is not my usual co-host. It's none other than news anchor, sometime co-host of the morning show this morning, Mam Nabu Kah. Mam Nabu, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. Such an honor.
It's a pleasure to have you here. And the one thing has not changed, and that is the show and what we do. So what we do is we take 10 big stories or 10 interesting stories, whatever way you want to skin it, from the week just gone by, and we go through them in some detail. Mam Nabu and I will kind of have a conversation around each of the stories, and we hope we will be able to keep it interesting and keep the interest of the viewers. So some of you are asking, go on, get on with it and tell us what's on the menu. All right. Well, first up, President Barrow has received GDC's Mama Kande at Mankamangkunda. Big event, and yes, people turned out in their hundreds. We know there's an election in December. Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education have just announced the 2026 WASC results, and it makes for interesting viewing and reading. Street vending, is it child labor or is it not? A debate has been sparked, both online, on radio, in the newspapers, you name it, and we'll get into why that debate is reared its head right now. And speaking of child labor, Children's National Assembly, they held a session recently, and they've called for greater inclusion by children in matters that affect children. Not an unreasonable request, I'm sure you'll agree. And also, His Excellency the President has inaugurated the Governor's residence and offices in URR. I won't spoil it for you, but you're in for a treat. And also, a very interesting story, certainly one that I found interesting. 500 Senegalese children are spending their 2026 vacation here in the Gambia. Why? Of course, you'll find out as we get into the story. Also, the women's AFCON history beckons for both Malawi and Cameroon, who have both made the final for the first time. Why is that? And we'll look into that. And also, 1 year on, in the United States, a family from the Gambia are still grieving over the loss of one of their members who was killed by a bullet that was apparently intended for somebody else. Up to now, nobody's been arrested, and they still want answers. And a Gambian family, this time based in the UK, some of their members are here. They made a significant donation of dental equipment to the Edward Francis Small Teaching Hospital. And finally, we go to Salone. Constitutional dispute has reared its head over what? Well, they're trying to change the electoral laws, what you need to get elected as a president, and also members of parliament. They want to do away with constituencies and get to proportional representation. So these are some of the stories. As usual, I always say, let's get things off and running. So the first one is the one I mentioned. His Excellency the President welcomed the Gambia Democratic Congress leader, Mama Kande, and members of his party in the Upper River region. And it was something of a loving. Have a look, have a listen.
The two sons of Jimara, once political foes, President Adama Barrow and GDC leader Mama Kande, are now strengthening their political partnership, determined to show that despite their different political backgrounds and past differences, they remain one family ahead of the crucial December 5th presidential election.
I am assuring Mama Kande that Jimara is already united. For that reason, I am calling on all the people of Jimara, NPP and GDC supporters to create space for each other. Let us embrace one another and remember that elections are won by the majority.
There is no politics today. I want to show the Gambian people and the world that President Adama Barrow and I have become one family. That is why I am here today. I also want to say that I do not want any problems in our partnership.
Ma'am, no problems in the partnership. We really know that there is going to be an election this year. And in case anybody thinks there's a campaign period, essentially the campaign period started from the 1st of January.
Yes, and I'm glad you mentioned the campaign period. I'm looking forward to it a lot. But it's a very interesting alliance. I mean, these are people who have had rivalry that has dated back to 2007, I believe.
Slung words at each other.
Quite a fierce one. So makes the alliance even more significant. And I think what has stood out to me the most throughout, we were listening to the story just now. They kept mentioning family.
It's
family,
quite. They're from the same area.
Yeah, they're from the same area. It's quite a warm political sentiment, and I think it does tweak the atmosphere around them and appeals to people who are seeking stability and peace. Usually in Gambian politics, political and personal sentiment do somehow intertwine.
Yeah, sure.
But beyond that sentiment, I do think it's a high-stakes strategic alliance. I think at the peak of the political season at the moment, and will obviously have benefits for both of them. Speaking about regional consolidation, we were talking about how they are both from Jimara.
Yes.
So I think it will neutralize, voter fragmentation, and they will have a very strong rural majority. And I'm looking to see how it's going to work out, because President Adama Barrow in his statement did say that they're looking forward to the Meet the People tour in September.
Indeed.
And
yes.
One of them was, I'm sorry, I forgot the name, but they were talking about how, I think it's Duosane's.
Duosano.
Statement, and that they've achieved unity. And election is won by majority, which is a sentiment on his part. It's not certain for sure at the moment.
Sure.
But I'm curious to see how the campaign is going to turn out, the Meet the People tour campaign.
Sure. I mean, I think we're all looking forward to that based on what's happened, because essentially this happened in the sidelines of a kind of inspection and development tour, as the president termed it. He opened hospitals, he donated ambulances, and as we'll see later on, inaugurated a governor's residence. And so this has been almost a kind of mini version of that Meet the People tour. It hasn't quite been that, but essentially what we've seen from the crowds and people saying how grateful they are that now we have a health center, now we have an ambulance, and we never had one of those since independence. Those sorts of things. It very much kind of reeks of a kind of Meet the People tour.
Of course. But going back to Sonkong Singate's statement, who was also, mentioning about electoral majority.
Yes, correct.
Right? And I'm thinking, things like this on paper, it does look attractive, or it does look like it guarantees a win, because GDC is obviously a very big party. It has been here for a while. And morphing into NPP means a lot. But my question is it going to be as smooth? Because I'm going to assume that, alliances like this, integration might actually also bring challenges as well, political friction with political loyalists.
That's right.
So along the way, I'm thinking, how do they bridge the gap between supporters from the GDC and NPP on the ground? How are they going to come together and we used to be against each other in the past, but now we're in the same team. So how do we work against that? I think about that as well.
Yeah, and I think this is what always tends to happen with alliances, because the leaders go and they make these, sign an MOU and what have you, and then the politicians kind of shake hands and say, it's all cool now between us. And then the supporters are saying, hang on a minute, I thought we were meant to be against these people just last week or just yesterday. What's changed? So then the job, of course, of the leader is to convince the people, like, this is why I have entered into this alliance. This is why I want to bring you along with me into it. And that's very much the job of a politician who is also a good negotiator. You have to negotiate with your people, with your constituency. I don't mean in the literal sense. I mean the ones who are your supporters. To say, I've entered into this, and these are the reasons. And he's going to have a job on his hands persuading them, because some of them will have long memories, and we're like, no,
very, very long memories.
For us. And of course, he was asked, and I'm not sure he particularly answered it. What's in this for you? And of course, as they all say, it's about unity, peace, and progress of the Gambia. So you wouldn't expect him to say anything else, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose.
But
I'm very worried about, because initially, when the year began, and then there was this survey about voters' rate, and the number of undecided voters was very, very, very huge. And my thought process is, with all of the political alliances that are forming, people who are going to be lost in between and don't have a place to belong, or they don't see themselves in any of these alliances. They kind of get pushed in that area, in the undecided voters area, and I think it's something to be.
And elections are very kind of tricky things, because if, for example, you bang on the message that, look, we're so fantastic, we're going to win, we've got the majority, somebody who might vote for you saying, well, you don't need my vote then, because you got it already. And that voter apathy creeps in, and ends up damaging. It's happened in countries, and people who've done history and will tell you this, in particularly political history, of times when they've overestimated the strength of their sort of audience, and then the audience will say, oh, well, you know, we don't need to vote, and then next thing you know, you lost an election.
That's right.
Yeah, so but this one, I think, something to look forward to, and interesting times ahead.
Yeah, and it has really changed the scene, you know, with other alliances that will be formed.
In fact, I was going to get onto that before we close this, because this is one alliance, but let's not forget that the NPP-led government, we always use the word NPP-led because itself is an alliance. You know, you have Hamad Ba, you have Dr. Ismaila Ceesay, they themselves are, you know, leaders of political parties, and yet they're currently part of the NPP-led government.
And I did actually read as well that UDP did sign an MOU with 5 political parties and other 2 political movements as well.
That's right.
So December 5th is coming. We'll see what the voters decide.
Lots of maneuvering, lots of musical chairs politically. Thank you for that, Ma'am. And that takes us on to story number 2, a very different story, but a very interesting one. Anybody who watched QTV, myself, Ma'am Nabu, this is something we're very interested in. What's that? It's education, and particularly the results from the WASC, which were announced by the Honourable Minister. Have a look and have a listen.
A comprehensive breakdown of the 2026 West African Senior Secondary School Certificate Examination WASC results shows that 1,410 out of the 19,762 candidates whose results were processed got 5 credits or more, including English language and mathematics, representing 7.13% of the overall results processed. While the analysis shows a slight improvement on last year, overall performance continues to reflect consistent pattern of poor results in core subjects, particularly English and mathematics.
Looking at the gender breakdown of candidates meeting this benchmark, female candidates led the nation by presenting 813 of the qualifying total, 57.66%, while male candidates accounted for 597, constituting 42.34%.
The request that comes to my office in terms of movement of teachers, we have so many people leaving the private schools, coming to the public schools.
A statement at the end there that's probably likely to go viral. So many teachers from the private school coming to the public schools. But to the meat of it, as always, ma'am, we tend to look at the figures, you know, the passes and so on. There's a slight, and they did make the point that it was a slight engagement, but the thing that improvement rather. But the thing that screamed at everybody is the kind of continued poor performance in English and maths, which are core subjects.
Yes.
And you know, people always say, oh, you know, why do we have to learn English? Well, our colleague Choi is studying in China, and he said almost everybody he meets in China wants to learn English.
Yeah.
It is an international language, whether we like it or not, and we have to just grasp that particular nettle. Wolof is not, Mandinka is not, you know, so you could be fluent in that. And so you need this if you want to engage with the world.
Anywhere you go in the world, English is a language you should speak or will be, you know, asked to speak. And it just brings us to the conversation that we have these talks all the time, every
time the results come out.
All over the same 2 subjects over and over and over again. And it brings me to the conversation that, you know, with other subjects, you can read, you can cram, you can go sit the exams and get your credits and move on. But with English and maths, it's very difficult to do that because these are subjects that you need cumulative mastery in from a very foundational level, right? So it brings us to the conversation, what are we doing to fix that? Because the reading culture we have right now, it's already very bad.
Yeah, sure.
Right, so if you don't fix that at the developmental level, at an early developmental level, going to, you know, primary, basic, upper, you know, and you get to the place where now I have to sit WASC, there's a gap there. That's not going to be suddenly filled because you have to sit the WASC exams. It's not going to be fixed that quickly. It's English language. Even outside of the English language subject itself, if you have to sit other papers where you are writing in English, it will also affect you as well. You know, there are students that does affect, like, you know the answer, but you're not writing it right.
Yeah, sure.
So
it's an interesting point that you've raised there, and I think, do we need, I mean, you know, they always say that, you know, don't keep making the same mistake and expect a different result. Do we need to change the way we teach these subjects, because they're core subjects for a reason, they're important? And I'll say quickly, when I came here in 2017 and they had this conference that I was involved in, the thing that shocked me, and it's not scientific evidence or anything. But we were escorted around a particular school here in Kanifing. It's a public school, by a teacher who, at the end of the thing, I asked all the teachers, what subject do you teach? And she told me she taught English. I was shocked.
Yeah.
Because if you had asked me, that's the last thing that would have come. I would have named 15 other subjects before I got to English. So poor was her English. And that is the problem. If you have poor English teachers, then you're not going to get students having good results in English. And if you have poor maths teachers who teach maths in an old-fashioned way, where people don't pick up the subject they don't like, it would never change. We'll be having this conversation every year for the next 100 years.
That's right. That's right. The teachers that are actually impacting this knowledge into students are very important, and it brings me to the point that the permanent secretary was talking about how teacher retention. That's also a very big problem, because if you have maybe qualified teachers, and then in these public schools they're teaching and they sit and they say, oh, I have a better opportunity, I'm moving. There's no sustainability, there's no retention, there's no continuity. And then you're maybe left with teachers that are not as qualified.
Well, this is it. I mean, they get very defensive when this comes up, and that what we heard there was in answer to the whole thing about teacher retention in the public schools, saying, are you retaining good quality? Look, you can get 100 teachers. If 80 of them are no good, then I'm sorry, it's a retrograde step. And so you can say, oh, they're swapping over. But what we want are quality for these subjects. Otherwise, we can't push the needle further in terms of improving in maths, improving in English. Nabu and I will be sitting here August next year having exactly the same conversation.
It's very terrifying, because it's 19,000 candidates and only over 1,000, a bit over 1,000. 5 credits. It's actually very
something. It's kind
very
of
worrisome
scary
to think about, and I think maybe changes could be made as well. I think there are students as well. One of the concerns that were also mentioned in the story, students that do have credits in technical fields, but they don't have in maths and English. Maybe I think we could have remedial programs where that could be fixed, but also give them the opportunity to develop skills as well. This is how we get young people to become job creators, because if we keep insisting, oh, you don't have these 2 subjects, now you have to keep trying, and you're missing out on this part as well, that could also be a problem.
I remember when I was in England, there was a guy in my class, and I had a Yugoslav lecturer, maths lecturer, and he called me aside one day and he said, stop hanging around with those guys. He said, those guys are repeating this year. And when he said, when I get to a particular subject, they sort of half remember it from last year, and they tune out because they think, oh yeah, I remember this. He said, well, no, if they had remembered it and retained it, they wouldn't be repeating the subject. He said, so, don't let these guys distract you, because you're not like that, and it made me think, actually, because it had never occurred to me. And he was right. Every time it got to a particular subject, you see these guys, I remember this from last year, I'm not even going to pay attention. Hang on, no, you need to pay attention, because there's a reason why you're repeating the subject. And so you talk about remedial classes. I think we need to do something drastic
of course,
to actually make this change, rather than kind of wringing our hands and saying, it's a terrible thing, what are we going to do about it? Well, let's do something about it.
My biggest concern is actually attitudinal change, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because we have this attitude in a lot of Gambian schools where you don't read until it's exam time. And then you start cramming. Once you sit that paper and then you're done, everything is gone.
It happens all over the world.
You come back, we ask you about that subject, you don't know anything about it. So that's also a problem as well.
It's true, and there are some people who, for them, it works. And I think that's why this guy was telling me, don't follow those guys, because not everybody can do that stuff where, some people need to be really intense in their studying. I remember when I went to a school, boarding school, Christ the King College in Sierra Leone, in Bo. My first night there, the bell rang for the end of the study period. I got up, packed my bags, and I realized nobody else was moving. So I went to the prefect, who was at the head of the room, and I said, wasn't that the end of the bell for the study period? He said, yeah. I said, so why does nobody? He said, no, these guys, they'll be here for another 2 hours. And I said, and he said, that is the reason why we have come top in the country for the last 6 years, because people study and study and study. It's not rocket science, it's not magic, it's not juju. Put in the effort, put in the sweat, and you'll get the reward.
That's right.
Don't leave it partying and so on, and then you say, oh, 2 weeks to go, I'll try and cram it because it'll be fresh in my mind. You're trying to put too much into a short space of time. It
it's
never
not going
works.
to work.
And at least it doesn't work for everybody.
Yeah,
yeah.
that's true.
So hopefully these results, I'm dreading saying the word, because last year I was here and I said it will be a wake-up call, but I suspect it won't be.
Let's hope this time it will be a wake-up call.
Let's hope
it's
so.
never too late.
It's
for
never too late. Thank you. Thank you. And that takes us to story number 3. Again, a story that has elicited a lot of comment, both online, on the radio, newspapers, TV, you name it, everywhere. People have been engaged in this conversation. What's it about? It's about, when does street vending become child labor, and when does it not? I won't spoil it for you. This is what sparked the conversation. Have a look, have a listen.
Children selling water, mints, fruits, eggs and other goods on the streets is a common sight in the Gambia. But when does such economic activity cross the line into child labor? Here is the Minister of Gender, Children and Social Welfare, Fatou Kinte.
Those children who sell nana in the streets, let's visit their homes and assess the home conditions and know the reason why the children are in the streets selling nana.
The most important thing is, even if assessment is necessary, it should go concurrently with protection. We have to protect the children. That's the first important thing. Then we can assess later, because you cannot do assessment later, then you think about protection. They should go concurrently, but protection should be constant. Then the assessment can chip in later.
And I think the minister meant in a kind of general sense, let's visit their homes. I think what she meant, maybe putting words in her mouth, is she's trying to say, let's understand their situation before we criticize them.
Right.
Because if all the statistics say there are over 180,000 of these children, we cannot visit all of their homes to understand why. So she was trying to draw the distinction between what is on paper and the reality that we have to deal with.
It was very interesting for me, because we did have Solomon Atimbuni.
Yes.
I'm pronouncing that right. Come on to the morning show. We were talking about this.
That's right, of course. Yeah.
Yes, and the minister's statement, I had a lot of concerns about it, because she was talking about how, some vending on the streets is not necessarily child labor. And I wanted to understand, what is the distinction there?
Yeah.
And if there are legal gaps that we need to look at in that case, right? Sure. So Solomon here is talking about how, protection and assessment needs to go concurrently.
Sure.
I kind of agree a bit, because I think it is very important for legal enforcement networks as well as social protection networks to work side by side, because what happens in the Gambia is that we look at child labor, or vending you would call it, through a very cultural, traditional lens.
Indeed.
Because there's this idea that if I have a child, if they're working for me in a certain manner, they are supposed to. It's duty, right?
Sure.
So it's very difficult to deal with things like that. Yeah. So if legal and social protection networks work together, it could help a bit, because if you go and prosecute basically, or look into this, and you get the child off the street and you find the parent or whatever, next week that same child is going to be back on the street, because what was the reason in the first place the child was there, right? And they would say poverty.
Sure.
The parent doesn't have enough money, so the child has to go out and work, while the parent maybe goes elsewhere to work to gather more money, right? So I think they could work together to bridge this gap. Yeah. And I think the Children's Act need to be looked at as well. I think it's outdated. I think it hasn't been amended since 2016. I was asking Solomon about it as well. He said they are looking into it.
Yeah, sure. It's a difficult one, because, what they try and do in other countries to kind of force parents, and in countries they jail parents, and they find them, and if you become a repeat offender, you'll end up in jail. And then somebody else, the state, looks after your child. So what they've said is that, look, we're doing this for your own good. If your child is out on the streets selling instead of being in school, it means they have a very low education and they will never escape poverty. Education is the one thing that can take them out of that.
That's right.
And that's why we're compelling that you send them to be educated. And so, yes, for the short term, you need the money now, and so you say, oh, because we need the money now, let my child. And the reason we get concerned about it is not the ones who are 16, 17, 18, because to us, culturally, they're not children. But
Right.
you and I know that we will go and we'll see 8, 9, 10-year-olds selling bananas and stuff. I could take 100 pictures and blur the images, but anybody else would know and see that these are really, really young children. And that's why we get concerned. And so, as I said, in other countries, they compel and compel and compel you. So we've passed similar laws that say it's compulsory. Or we turn a blind eye to it, as we do to many other things.
Implementation is a problem.
Implementation for like 99% of our laws, they're great and they look great on paper. But as you say, it's a nuanced thing. It's not black and white. There are grey areas. Yeah.
And the conversation is also around, as long as they don't do it during school hours, it's fine.
And so things like the International Labour Organization,
yeah.
even they draw that sort of distinction, saying that if it's in a safe environment and it's not in school hours, then you're not harming their education, because they're getting an education and they're helping towards the family thing, and it's not slavery, because they might get paid by their parents, or they get some sort of benefit from it. So even they are not, because they know the reality. You could bring down a kind of hard and fast rule, but you go to places in India, Pakistan and so on, and it's the same conversation that we're having, that they're having there. How do you draw the line between helping my parents and not going to school, or going to school and helping my parents, at the same time, because obviously they say, if you have a child working outside of school hours, they're too exhausted to do well at school and so on.
Yeah.
So the cycle is, and it's very kind of complex and nuanced.
And I think to solve it, there has to be a lot of data collection that will be done. I think that's also a problem. I think that could be looked at, because if you don't have the facts, the solutions you're applying, really, what are you applying them to?
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. Thank you for that. And still staying with children, Children's National Assembly. It was on the 13th, I think it was, International Youth Day on Wednesday. And so children from the National Assembly called for greater participation in decision-making, particularly in things affecting children. Here's some of what some of them had to say.
So even though we have different contexts, our aspirations are the same. We all want quality education, safety, respect, and to contribute to the Gambia. So the theme is telling us that to achieve that, we need to work together as one.
I think that is partially achieved, because we do have youth involved in decision making, but their decisions taken seriously at large. When you look at the political space as well, I think we need more young people in it. So yeah, partially we're participating in decision making.
So today, as we celebrate the Youth International Day, I think one challenge that we should try and overcome is the unemployment rate. We can see it as many of our youths are not employed, and I want to really distill our education system, because you go to school for like 12 years and all you do is like reading, and no vocational skills or stuff is added into our education, even though we're having improvements now. But I think it's a bit late that it is coming now, and it's not yet that improved. That while going to school, young people will be able to also learn livelihood skills that will help them after graduation, maybe start their own things. Youths nowadays don't just want to be employed, they need tools to start their own things.
The Speaker of the Children's National Assembly there, ending that. Lots of things to pick up from that, but there was something there that made you want to respond immediately.
Political space on employment, skills development. Very important things. I mean, the youth in our country, they represent over 60% of our population, and not having them in decision-making spaces, I think it's very concerning.
Indeed.
Having the Children's National Assembly, I was watching the story, and I found it quite interesting, because we're giving these children spaces, they come from different aspects of life, but all united under the same concern, as she mentioned.
That's it.
Right, and then giving them this space for legal understanding, leadership skills, public advocacy skills as well. But I think a gap needs to be bridged between, when these children come up with these things and they have concerns that they've raised, policies that they also want to raise as well. The National Assembly, the main one, relevant ministries should be able to take them seriously and put their concerns into consideration.
Sure.
She was mentioning just now how they are involved in decision making, but how seriously are they taking it? It's partially.
Well, this is it, yes. I mean, it's an interesting one. In fact, because for me, that was the thing that leapt out at me, because I think she's right that the times when children are involved in decision making, they're so few and minor.
Yeah.
What I like about the National Assembly here, Children's National Assembly, is that we're the only country in the region that has it. And if you looked in the audience, there were several National Assembly members there, as in the senior National Assembly. And that kind of gave me some hope, some encouragement that they were there to listen. They weren't just there to show face.
Right.
Because they must hear these concerns. And as you talk about the youth bulge, there's such a significant sector numerically of the population. We have to listen to them. We have no choice but to listen to them.
Yeah. And he was talking about as well that they don't have any belonging in the political space, right? And when you combine that, lack of political belonging and economic helplessness, it does speak a lot about the unemployment that he's talking about, because these youths, they feel like they belong nowhere. They're just like somewhere in the middle, right?
Yeah, this is it.
And I'm glad he brought up skills development. We were talking about it just now when we were dealing with the WASP topic. I think it's very important that we give young people the opportunity to get into skills as early as when they're in high school, or even lower basic school. I know for most of them, after they graduate, they do go to TVET institutions, those who gravitate towards that.
That's right.
But I think giving people the opportunity to look into skills that they could have is also very important at a very young age.
Stage. Exactly. Yeah, I think you're 100% right on that. And we don't do that. And it's almost an afterthought, and it shouldn't be, because that might be there might be a genius at that, and struggle with other things. So find out early, and then encourage them early. It's not like you're pushing them there, because it's not as if, oh, this one is better than that, which we've always tended to do. And so in terms of the political thing, the only thing that kind of made me step back is I don't want them to get into politics in the way of party politics. Where parties start having children's sections, and they already have youth sections, all of them, or most of them do. You don't want children to start getting party political at too young an age, but you can't avoid politics. It impacts everything we do. From whether I catch a bus or train or whatever, move from here to there, live here or live there, politics will impact that. So you can't avoid it, of course, but nonetheless, I think if they can steer clear of party politics, nonetheless, having National Assembly members there listening and contributing, I think is a good thing.
Yeah, I'm honestly really, really looking. This is a very great start. I hope moving forward, they could be given more space to be heard and involved in decision making.
Yeah, so let's hope those that should be listening are listening. Thank you, ma'am. And on to another very different matter. I mentioned that His Excellency the President is on this development tour, as he's called it, inaugurating roads, laying foundation stones for various buildings, inaugurating buildings, and in the Upper River region, he inaugurated the new governor's residence and offices. Have a look, have a listen.
Governor is directly representing the President at the regional level. Their welfare and their environment should be conducive. That's why we are now building structures that are everlasting structures, that are structures that create a very conducive environment for the governor to do his work. And also when people visit the governor, they respect him because of his environment. Because the comfort and the environment they have within the regions is even better than the capital. So we are trying to encourage that. And obviously it's not only the governor's residence. We are trying to modernize the entire Gambia. The entire country we are trying to modernize. We are building roads, we are doing electricity, we are doing health, that is medical facilities, schools, you name it. Simultaneously we are doing all at the same time with limited resources. So I will seize this opportunity to congratulate the governor, to congratulate the contractor, to congratulate also the Ministry of Works and NRA, because the plan, they did the plan, they drew the plan. The Ministry of the Road Authority and the Ministry of Works. The contractor is a Gambian, so everything is Gambian here. We are looking now inwards. Everything is about local. Resources are local, contractor is local, and the plan and everything is local. So the whole money remains in the country.
And there you heard His Excellency the President, everything is local. contractor, designer, architect, you name it.
You know, like just now when we were talking about skills development in youth, and I wanted to say that, oh, you know, like there's work demand in the market and then we can't offer local talents to it. Just for him to turn around and say this, it makes me like extremely happy.
Yeah, it made me happy for that reason too, because, you know, you look around lots and lots of places where you see new buildings and you say, oh, who's the architect? They say, oh, some Ghanaian, Nigerian, Sierra Leonean, whatever. And then you have this. Now, before we came to this story, I'd asked you if you'd been to any of the governor's residences. Well, I had been, because when I first joined QTV, we did a tour where I met all the regional correspondents in the regions. And so I wanted to go and see, because I'd heard about these governor's residences. And they were magnificent, but a lot of them were in disrepair. It's the kind of thing that we're not good at. So when I got feedback from the guys who went, Abdu and Usman Jatta, they were really impressed with the quality of the work that they saw in these buildings, that like seriously impressed, not even just a bit. And so it's a good thing, because as he said, you know, effectively the governor represents the president regionally, and that's the way that post has kind of devolved now, really, and so it's good, particularly the local thing. I was really pleased about that.
And I think it's very poetic how, you know, UR over the years is now becoming a huge economic and administrative center, right?
Massive.
I think it's about to create a lot of, you know, put attention on that place, you know, facilitate a lot of movement in terms of goods, services, and a lot of other things. But you mentioned something just now that's very important, which is retaining it. So I don't know how well they will do that, because that's always a problem with these
culture.
You know, institutions. Like we have very poor maintenance culture, and I don't know how well that can be looked into. You know, we need to preserve these institutions.
Well, I joked with these guys. I said, let's go back there a year from now and see whether the upkeep has been as good as because we've been here before. I don't mean literally in that place, but we've been to places before where we've been blown away by how fantastic it looked on the day it was inaugurated. You go there 2 years later and you can barely recognize the place. I hope it won't be that, because as I said, the previous governor's mansions, you'd have to call them, they're massive. They were magnificent, and you could envisage what they must have looked like in their heyday. But they'd all been kind of left to go into kind of disrepair over the years, and that's why we need new ones now. But those ones, if you go to England or Scotland or Ireland, the ones that were built at the same time still look as good now as they did then. Why? Because they have a good maintenance culture, and we don't. And that's what we need for this. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted this story, because yes, it's brilliant, it's magnificent, it's good that it's local, but can we do it and maintain it?
Yes, and I guess like the residents, how well it works is also like in terms of what type of, how fast it can offer services to its people as well.
Indeed,
you know, you're there, but how are you benefiting those around you? I think that's also very important as well.
It's a crucial point, you're right. And that takes us beautifully to the end of the first 5 stories, and we'll go for a commercial break. And after the break, you know what's coming, 5 equally interesting stories. Join us after this break. Hello and welcome back. After that commercial break, you are watching QTV and you are watching The Week in Review. I'm Ade Darami, as I was in the first half, and as she was in the first half, she's still Mam Navuka. She hasn't run away. And to you, the viewer, thank you for staying with us. And as I always promise, 5 equally good stories to come in this part of the program. Now, we were just talking about the governor's residence, and I think it took about 2 or 3 years from planning to just kind of delivery, which is fantastic, because as I said, people were blown away by it, you know, those who'd been there. But our next story is very, very different, and there's a clip here I've included for a deliberate reason, and I hope you'll spot why I've included it. You have 500 plus Senegalese children holidaying in the Gambia. Colonies de Vacances 2026, summer vacation program. We don't have summer here, but rain season vacation program is what it is. And here's some of what we learned when we heard from the children and the organizers.
More than 500 children from Senegal are spending their 2026 summer vacation in the Gambia as part of the program. The children are staying in 4 hotels in what is center of the Gambia's tourism area. The visit by the Minister of Tourism highlights the strong friendship between the Gambia and Senegal and showcases the country as a welcoming destination for visitors across the region.
And this is one market that we try to attract so that they can fill hotels, so that business can continue. That's the primary objective from a hotel point of view. But from another point of view is that they are our neighbors, they are kids, and that it's part of the structure in Senegal.
Once again, welcome to our summer camp. We hope you enjoy your time with us today, interact with our incredible campers and see the lasting impact of investing in your youth.
The astute among you will realize that the bit I'm talking about is the bit at the end there. That's a child from Senegal delivering his speech in English. And I said to our people, I bet you if we send 500 children to Senegal, they would not deliver their speech in French. Seriously. But it also talks to what we were talking about, the kind of ubiquity and the importance of English. The fact that obviously those children learn English.
Yes.
And he gave his speech in English, knowing that his other 500 plus, because it's more than 500, would also understand it, not just the Gambians.
I had quite a crazy whiplash when I went over to Senegal during a school trip.
Right.
And I went to Cheikh Anta Diop University.
Okay.
And it's insane, the good English that the students they speak. You would
think.
It's
embarrassing. Yeah.
It's their national language.
Yeah, quite. It's embarrassing. I mean,
it's quite impressive.
Yeah, yeah.
And Mr. Ade, just before we discuss the story,
sure.
You keep mentioning about summer. We don't have summer in the Gambia. You emphasize about that all the time.
It's a European thing. We have rain season and dry season, and our rain season is the European summer, and so we keep calling it summer because. But summer, if you look up in a dictionary, it's a time when the weather is bright and sunny, the opposite of what we have in the rain season. So it's obviously not summer. And I do get annoyed when we keep referring to it as summer and winter. We even use the term winter. We obviously don't have winter here. We have rain season and dry season. But onto this particular one, Colonies de Vacances, a great idea. They come here for their vacation. They learn about Gambia. And Gambian culture, and they immerse themselves.
I know, it's quite important, not only like in sharing culture between Gambia and Senegal. We have a very good relationship, people to relationship, cultural tradition. You get to have all of this, but also regional sub-Saharan tourism as well, which is quite important, as he was mentioning. When it's this time of the year, it's raining, we don't have a lot of tourists coming in.
Hotels are empty.
They're empty. Hospitality sector is dying. So having things like this help us a lot in terms of driving the economy forward as well. And I think we're trying to have all year seasonal tourism.
That's right.
Instead of seasonal tourism.
This is it. So for some people, they'll come at a certain time of year to see the birds, see the wildlife. Others will come for particular time to do the sun, sea and sand, the usual stuff that we've always done. But stealing a phrase from Mamadou Mbodj, if we want to move the needle forward, we need to change it, because we see other countries who are at the same stage as us 15, 20 years ago in terms of numbers of tourists. They're no longer using the kind of post-COVID excuse, COVID impacted us and we haven't recovered. They've recovered till they're now getting more tourists than they got in the pre-COVID period. So they're doing something that we're not doing, and they include everything, music festivals that feature international artists, arts festivals that feature people, arts and craft festivals that feature people. We are about to have WAFest, West African.
I was about to mention that. Thank you for bringing it up.
Well, and that is one such thing where you're getting people from up to 30 countries or more will be coming here to display their cuisine. And of course, the media from those countries will be coming, and even some tourists who they chase cuisine around the world will be coming. And so, we're trying to kind of change it. And that's why I wanted this story, because this whole Colonies de Vacances thing is part of that.
Right.
It's us trying to break the mold of what we do. And just quickly, a former teacher who's now a friend of mine, I'll name him Mr. Mucklejohn. He's been running a similar thing in England for many years. So I was really pleased and surprised. And I'll send him this story because we're actually friends on Facebook. But he was my English teacher. And it was almost identical to this. So what he did was that in the summer there, when the schools closed for the longest time, he would have foreign students from the rest of the world come there, occupy the schools that were now empty, and take them on theatre tours, take them to the cinema to see British films, take them to things like botanical gardens, the zoo, and so on. You know, so for about 5 or 6 weeks, really immerse yourself. And he's been doing it since 1970, and he's still doing it. You know, and he still looks the same. When I saw him the other day, I couldn't believe it. Like, this guy was my teacher. But it's a similar thing, and it's a game changer, and it could be for us if we expand it. 500 children from Senegal. What about next time some children from Senegal, some from Guinea-Bissau, Sierra Leone, you name it, you know. Yeah.
And, you know, I was just wondering, you know, when you were mentioning about Sun, Sea and Sound, what else do we have to offer next to that? And, you know, when we are now expanding that arena, you know, and having these children here witnessing that, they'll go back to their country and tell others and others and others who will want to come. And people who will be witnessing it through, you know, what we are broadcasting in the media could also want to come. And we could build relations that could last.
And you know, we had a series of stories that we did recently where our former colleague Julde Njai went to Pelican Island.
Right.
Yeah. Now, the people who went there last week found that the pelicans have migrated because they are migratory birds. So if you go there at a particular time of year, you will meet them there. If you go at another time of year, you won't meet them there. And so for those who want to see the spectacular sights of these hundreds, if not thousands of pelicans, you need to go at a particular time of year, and we could sell that as a tourist attraction. And of course, the day they went there, who did they meet? The Turkish ambassador with some friends that he'd brought from Turkey just to show them the pelicans.
Mr. Ade, I think that just shows you the media has a key role to play here.
Huge.
You guys have to be there and broadcasting these things for people to see, otherwise...
They don't get to see it. And that's why we'll be doing a series of programs that we hope will show these sorts of things.
Amazing.
So thank you for that. So yeah, Colonies de Vacances, I hope these 500 plus children from Senegal really enjoy their time here. Now on to something that I've been following for a long time. And I have to be honest, the last 3 or 4 Women's Africa Cup of Nations are the ones where I've paid a lot of attention. And the last 3 have all been hosted by Morocco. And we'll get onto that because I think that has to be part of the discussion. But the big surprise is that Malawi and Cameroon, 2 teams who never had a clue that they would be in the final, are going to be in the final on Sunday. Anyway, have a look and have a listen.
Regular watchers of African women's football are describing the 2026 tournament as the most exciting and unpredictable so far. No team embodies that unpredictability more than Malawi, a team making its debut in the competition, as well as being the lowest ranked team in the whole tournament, could not have been expected to make it all the way to the final. Having already surprised everyone by emerging at the top of a group which included Nigeria, Zambia and Egypt, perhaps we should have become used to expecting the unexpected from them. If Malawi have emerged as the undisputed team of this tournament, regardless of what happens in the final, Michele has emerged as the player of the tournament after a string of fantastic saves in almost every game. As the semi-finals seemed to be heading to the inevitable penalty shootout as they got closer to the end of extra time, Morocco were handed a chance to win the game with only minutes to go. They were awarded a penalty after what seemed an exaggerated reaction by one of their players to being tackled. Fatima Tagnout, a star performer in this and the previous WAFCON, was given the opportunity to send her side through to what would have been their second successive final, only to see her shot saved by the seemingly unbeatable Michele. In a sporting gesture, the defeated Moroccan team lined up, even as many of them wept, to shake hands with their conquerors.
And yeah, that last bit, Mam Nabu, I watched the whole game, and Morocco, the hosts, and when all the other big guns had been kicked out, because they're such a good team, and the second-ranked team in Africa, Nigeria, the top-ranked team, were already out. So the last 4, everybody thought, it's Morocco's to win now because they're at home, huge crowds roaring them on, and it was really Tagnout, I was saying to you off air, one of my favorite players from the previous, really bubbly player, very skillful. And it was really odd because the penalty was placed, someone else was going to take it, and then they called her to come and take it. And I thought, that's odd. And then she missed, or it was saved. But I mentioned that Morocco were hosting this for the third time. And that's kind of where I wanted to frame our discussion, partly, the lack of investment in women's football. So first of all, you take Malawi, who this is their first ever appearance at WAFCON. Why? Because for the previous two editions, their government wouldn't even fund them. So even if they'd wanted to participate, they wouldn't have been able to. They've now funded, and look where it is. They've landed in the final. And the reason Morocco are hosting it for the third successive time, not just the third time, but the third successive, they've had it more than 3 times. Nobody else wanted to host it. and to me, that is shocking. It's embarrassing. And there were times, Morocco, when they thought they'd been hard done by, in the men's AFCON, when they lost to Senegal, they were saying, we're not even going to host the women's AFCON because, people are against us. But, ma'am, 3 times in succession, they're hosting it because nobody else wants to host it.
That is quite shocking to me. I can't believe it.
It's shocking. It's disgraceful. We know they have the facilities, but nobody else. I mean, South Africa has the facilities. Ivory Coast has the facilities. Nigeria has the facilities.
I have to ask. Yeah. Is it because it's WAFCON? It's the women. Is it because of that? Because I need to know. It doesn't make any sense to me that, they've been having really, really good games. Yeah. Yesterday I was reading the news about Nigeria being knocked out. That shocked me because I've read that they've been champions for a while.
10 times. The competition has been played 14 times, and they've won it 10 times. Once they won it 5 in a row, and when they lost the previous WAFCON to South Africa, that stopped them winning 4 in a row, because they'd done 5 in a row right at the beginning of the competition. So and the other spillover from that is that it means they're not going to the Women's World Cup next year.
Yes, I saw that as well. Yeah. I found it quite shocking. Nigeria's out, and then you were mentioning debutants. Malawi and Cameroon, they are facing each other off in the finals.
Well, Cameroon are not debutants. It's the first time that Cameroon have made it to the final. They've got to a quarterfinal before.
Okay.
Malawi have never even been in the competition. The 2 debutants this year were Cape Verde and Malawi. Cape Verde actually came bottom of their group, but they managed to score 3 goals, and so they were really happy with that. But Malawi, first time ever. And now they're in the final. Cameroon, first time of making it to the final.
And is this the first time we've had like a 16 tournament?
It is the first time. It is the first time. So the tournament was expanded, and so you had 4 groups of 4. And Group D, I think it was, which had Malawi and Nigeria, you actually had 3 teams finishing on 6 points. And they had this weird thing, rather than settling on goal difference, which was what normally happens. If it had been on goal difference, Zambia would have gone through instead of Nigeria. Nigeria went through because they played in the head-to-head. They had beaten Zambia 1-0. Everybody thought it was a bit unfair, and they're saying it should be changed. So that was the.
The reason I'm happy about the 16 tournament thing is now we have Malawi, Cameroon, Algeria, and I believe Morocco.
Yeah.
They've made it to
the
Women's World Cup. That's broader representation for Africa.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. And the ones who didn't make it, Ghana and Algeria, they went into a playoff, and they go into another playoff, and they could make it to the World Cup still. So all is not lost for them. But,
so let's talk investment, like you.
Investment is
you were mentioning. It's very important, and it makes me think of our women players here.
Yeah, indeed. And
like what we could pour into them, and what it could mean for Gambia if we gave them a chance.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and that's.
I think it's something that could be looked into as well.
That's right. So yeah. So story number 8 was in this extended week in review. A Gambian family in America mourning the loss of one of their number who was killed just over a year ago. Have a look, have a listen.
Abdul Haidara was killed on August 3rd, 2025 in what police describe as a drive-by shooting outside a late-night establishment. According to reports, Haidara was an innocent bystander, with the bullet allegedly intended to another person who was standing close to him. The family said Abdul Haidara, an imam, is deeply missed by his loved ones and the community he served. They said the lack of an arrest has made it particularly difficult for the family to process his death and find closure. Investigators are still actively pursuing leads in the case, noting that police also have video footage showing 3 individuals they would like to speak to as part of the ongoing investigation. Despite the individuals being clearly shown in the CCTV images, no one has come through to identify them.
Ma'am Nabu, I went on various YouTube pages that had this footage. Some were police pages, some were local TV in America pages. The same comment was made, saying, hang on, these guys, you can quite clearly see them. Yeah. How come nobody's been able to identify them? And that must be the thing that the family must be thinking as well.
And you know, like that, what that made me think of is, like, in a lot of diaspora communities, people will recognize someone who has committed a crime, but they are very reluctant to go forward
engage with the
authorities. Yeah. You know, I don't know if there's mistrust there, or there's something they're afraid of, but a lot of them will recognize, but they won't go forward.
Or they might be just wicked people that people are scared of. You know, because we were told that it was a drive-by shooting, and it is alleged that the intended target was somebody else, and he just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and so was struck. And that, of course, makes it all the more painful for the people. But this guy was somebody who was very much loved in the community. He was an imam, and his father is one as well. His father spoke, and you know, we hope they find the people and they get justice.
Yeah, there's external pressure just needs to be kept on, you know, keep reporting about it, because if not, it's just going to be a court case. It will just go away. Yeah, sure. Thank you. And now on to another family in slightly better circumstances, a Gambian family, some of whom are based in the United Kingdom, and some of whom are based here in the Gambia. They've donated a significant amount of dental equipment to the Edward Francis Small Teaching Hospital. Have a look, have a listen.
Edward Francis Small Teaching Hospital in Banjul to present dental equipment worth millions of dollars to the hospital. The donation was made on behalf of their sister, Dr. Njimbe Senghor, a UK-based dentist who began her dental career at the Edward Francis Small Teaching Hospital in memory of their late mother, Ajaratu Aissatou Jain, whom the family remembered as a caring and selfless woman. The donated equipment includes dental chairs, an oilless compressor, an assistant tool, a built-in ultrasound unit, a LED curing light, an autoclave.
In support of this patriotic gesture from our daughter and sister, the family locally has decided to make a contribution of $100,000 to purchase dental consumables to get the unit started. Dr. Njimbi would also like to assure the management of Edward Francis Small Teaching Hospital, and more particularly the dental fraternity, of her unwavering support for all the efforts you make on a daily basis to ensure that Gambians without distinction enjoy the best dental care possible.
In fact, it came at the point that we really need them most. When I heard some of these, I'm a restorative dentist, and our students, final year students, are currently going to restorative dentistry posting. And if one of them is there, they can even tell you the challenges we're having, training them, because of the little facilities that we have on ground.
Ma'am, I have like a million ulterior motives for choosing this story. One is about inspiring other people.
Yes.
So Dr. Njimbe Senghor, who we heard mentioned there, and I was telling you of, I looked her up online, very highly respected in England, where she now practices. Started at Edward Francis Small.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's about not forgetting your roots, where you came from, and then donating what we've said is significant. So that one I wanted to mention because it's about others might be in her position and may have forgotten where they started because of where they've risen.
That's the first thing I thought of when I read the story. I was like, this literally opens the door for people outside, qualified Gambians that are working in a lot of technical fields to be providing, you know, things like this in Gambia, because what it does, it builds long-term institutional capacity, right? You've heard him just now on the news talking about how they're now training, you know, people who are in dental fields that did not have the capacity because they lack facilities. So it's a huge, you know, step forward.
Yeah, and it's about building capacity, and you know, my other kind of ulterior motive was that we talked about lack of maintenance culture.
Right.
So if Dr. Njimbe is watching, please have some of your family members check up every couple of months that the equipment is being maintained as it should. And I mean that only half seriously or half jokingly. We really need that, otherwise,
yeah, we do. Oral health in the Gambia is something that is not talked about enough, and a lot of people can't access it because of how expensive it is. Now we have, equipment at the Edward Francis Multi-Teaching Hospital. I think that alone could motivate us to we need to maintain this. We need it, because people who are in lower income backgrounds can now have, quality access to dental services.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you for that. And that takes us to our final story. We won't dwell too long on this one, even though it's my own people, my Salone people. Constitutional dispute in Sierra Leone. I won't spoil it for you. Listen to this.
The bill introduces significant changes to the country's political landscape ahead of the 2028 presidential election, including lowering the threshold required to win the presidency from 55% to 50% plus one vote, instituting a proportional representation system for legislative races, and mandating a 30% quota for women in political leadership. President Bio, who addressed the nation on television ahead of the vote, and his ruling SLPP are fully in support of the bill. However, the passage was marred by a dramatic walkout by members of the main opposition party, the All People's Congress. The opposition argues this procedure violated the Constitution, which explicitly requires constitutional amendments to be supported by a two-thirds majority of all elected members of parliament on their second and third readings.
I don't know who the reporter was, but she summed it up really well. Those two parties, SLPP and APC, since Sierra Leone's independence, have been the two that have always been at loggerheads. And so it is no surprise now that a proposal by one has led to a walkout by the other. So SLPP proposed, Madabio is SLPP, and they don't have a huge majority in parliament, but they have a majority in parliament. And so we have now this impasse where they didn't even want to engage with the process because they thought, this is wrong. So should they have stayed and debated and engaged with the process, or should they have walked out and they were hoping they were going to cut the legs from under it?
I was very, proud of the route that they took with how they responded to it, because looking at Africa historically, we have a manner of responding to things in a way that are not quite amicable, right? So sending this over to the Supreme Court, I think, was the best decision they could have possibly made, and it's going to put a lot of advancement, in institution dispute resolution, in the region. So I think that's one of the things that I appreciated the most about the whole thing.
So, and the Supreme Court will have the final say, and we will know whether, as the Constitution or part of it says quite clearly,
they have a very sensitive responsibility now, because now whatever decision they come up with, they have to do it impartiality and with most clarity.
Well, this is it, and we just hope that both sides respect whatever the result is from the Supreme Court. Yeah, thank you for that, ma'am, and. Just a big thank you for stepping in and taking over Mr. Mboji's seat.
I hope I did him justice.
I'm sure you did more than justice. And to you, the viewers, thank you for watching. Until we come your way again next week. Goodbye.